Okay, welcome everyone. This is the first of a large set of videos which will kind of go along and mimic some of the concepts that we're doing in an Introduction to AutoCAD class in Sketchup and some other engines, I must say, to get you to the point of that a lot of what you're doing in an AutoCAD or any class is learning a set of what should be transferable, spatial, or thought skills. And so over time you'll see this kind of work is only possible, I would say, if you have access to SketchUp where you have an ability to put in rubies, in other words, all these plugins. And so I'm going to really suggest anyone following along with this does get a hold of SketchUp and have an ability to put in some of these additional program items which are freely available or very cheaply available on the web at a place called Smustard, or out at, we're going to call it the French guy's site. There's a number of sites out there, Jim Fultz, a lot of people putting shareware out there. So we'll talk later about cleaning up our screens so it always looks the same, but right away, very often, you're going to see one of the most important things is the ability to kind of clean up and not have too much on your screen so your brain gets confused, but then you'll be able to have to put it back. You go to Toolbars, Draw Toolbars. I'm going to turn off all my sketchy fun stuff. For me, anytime I got sketchy physics around, I want to hit that button. So I'm going to turn it off, but you'll see sketchy physics, sketchy replay, even sandbox here. You're going to see I'm going to turn that off. But I've got a number of things up here, but what we definitely want to have is a large tool set around. And that large tool set, I guess, is not anything I see here. Alright, so I'm clicking around, I'm highlighting over the top, I'm right-clicking over the top, and I'm erasing. And we're going to use, you're going to have different looks to different versions of SketchUp, but we're going to be really looking down here at this dialog box here, just like we look down at the command window in AutoCAD. One thing I will let you note that in SketchUp, you cannot have a number of different views up. It's very different than AutoCAD. But the initial view that comes up in SketchUp is this 3D view here. What we're going to do right now is we're going to go ahead and change that view to make it a flat view by going to Camera now. You would think it would be View. It's not. It's Camera. It's a point of view, Standard Views, Top, and even now Camera Parallel Projection, and you'll see now we're looking straight down at that thing. Now I want to point that out because what I want to introduce you to is in the notation for in SketchUp how we put absolute and relative coordinates in, just like you're learning in AutoCAD. Now I want to point out that in AutoCAD you have an ability to put absolute coordinates in. Excuse me, I'm going to stop and pause and sneeze. That was a nice sneeze. Okay, you're going to want to put things in absolute places and just as often in relative places. Whereas AutoCAD lets you do relative spherical coordinates. In other words, what I call the natural coordinate system is two angles and a distance. SketchUp is going to need a ruby to do that. So I'm just going to show you right now how you do coordinates in SketchUp. In AutoCAD, you'll see how it works. In SketchUp, absolutes are kept in solid brackets, and relatives are kept in what would be called, I guess, the greater and less than brackets. So I'm going to show that to you right now. I'm in this flat plane. I'm going to arbitrarily put a point here, and it's asking me where to put the length. Well, at this point, if I go ahead and open up a bracket, the hard bracket, which is just over the comma key, I can tell it I want to go 10. You have to be specific sometimes, whether it's feet or not. 10, comma, 10, comma, 10. But I'll leave that last comma to 0, but let you know in SketchUp you must put that last coordinate in. So I'm going to suggest that in AutoCAD you put that last coordinate in. That is the Z coordinate. Close up the bracket, and that took it to the exact right spot you wanted to go to. We can now, I believe, we'll see whether I just tend to escape out of here and start again, but we'll see later. I'm going to go now. You see it's grabbing to that point. I wouldn't necessarily have to grab to that point. I could put in bracket 10 comma 10 comma 0, close bracket. At this point, would take it there. I can put the next point, absolute, let's say minus 10 in the x, comma 10 in the y, comma 0, close bracket. Close that up, and you see that it is actually drafting these things to the right spot. I'm hitting escape here, so escape does tend to end the command. And now I'm going to show you the relative. I'm going to go up here, way up here in distance, and now I want to go 10 left and 10 down if we think about down in an XY plane. So I want to go minus 10, but relative. To do relative coordinates, you use the less than command. And once again, minus 10, comma, minus 10, comma 0. If you do not put the third coordinate in here, it will not take it in SketchUp. Therefore, develop the habit in AutoCAD of doing the same. These things, if you stick them in your head, it's going to help. The extra work, not a big deal. And there you go. Now I can go to absolute. If I want to put something else, I can go absolute. I want to go to 20, comma 50, comma 0. Hit a return there. It's going to take it absolute, but I want to point out what it did. It didn't finish out my command there. So very often what you see at this point, I spacebar, come back there once again. I'm going to go once again relative. I'm going to go relative 30 in the x, minus 50 in the y, and 0 in the z. The relative is the, and as soon as I move my mouse, I'm screwed. So you can't move your mouse. So minus 20, comma, minus 40, comma 0, with your hand off the mouse. Another theme you'll see in AutoCAD is very often taking your hand off the mouse, and you do that. That's taking relative. You escape or spacebar out, and you're done with that command. So that is in effect. You see there's something called an inferences. You see this thing jumping around in SketchUp. That's one of the great tools. However, it can also get in the way. So how does that work? Well, let me show you. Without looking in 3D, let's assume this is still a flat plane, but I want to go directly above this and up 10. So what can I do? I'm going to click on here, go there, and now I can just use a relative coordinate 0, 0, 10. Close up that greater and less than, hit a return, and then escape bar. So now when I look and pull out of the space, you'll see that little tiny piece was put there. So I'm willing in and out. You're going to see me introducing these things here, and then eventually I will point out, and very quickly within SketchUp we will take you out to this web console where you learn to draw things this way as well. Slightly, a little bit. So those of you who start working in Excel or in other different ways, you do not see these things as being disconnected. There's no requirement of mastery here. There's just a requirement that you realize that what is going on in spatial graphics is vectors, vector math and raster math, and it's fun, incredibly cool stuff when you start animating, and it helps you, your clients, and eventually even your coworkers to visualize some of your great ideas that you'll get here in the technical college system. Okay, this is a shareware program. What we were reviewing there is absolute and relative coordinates. I will point out finally that, once again, camera, standard views, top. Using relative in terms of distance is a little bit different in here. So what you've got to do if you wanted to go, let's say, 10 degrees up, you use a tool here that looks something like this. It's the protractor tool. You set that here. You set your distance here, and let's say you wanted to go 10 degrees. Now that's set. Now if you go line here, you can tell it you want to go a distance of maybe it's 20 feet. At the moment, you see the difference between the dashed line and the other line. I'm clicking on that, right-clicking and erasing. At the moment, there is no way that I know of directly to put in that pure polar distance of distance and angle like there is in AutoCAD. I'm going to point out that I will be, as I've said before, very much stressing in AutoCAD not using all the clicky clicks, nicky nicks down in the bottom. SketchUp, they're kind of implied, all these snaps and all that, but all of your tabs along the bottom in AutoCAD should be off. Okay, so those two things right there can get you an incredible amount of work done. Believe it or not, those two things within SketchUp is really the way to start, in addition to just playing around, right? Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy this series, and I hope you make it to class when you can at 7:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays for a 7:30 to 8 session on how to kind of integrate your thought process between SketchUp, AutoCAD, and applied spatial mathematics. Thanks for listening.